Thank you all for coming. We're going to get started because we're in a kind of a tight time frame because of the service at 10. So I wanted to tell you real quickly a little bit about how this all evolved. And Amy Stoffenmeyer and I were on a trip in January to Egypt, and it was the University of Michigan alumni group. And our guide ended up being Hisham, who we just thought was so fabulous and knew so much about the antiquities of Egypt that we wanted to have him share with you all. So we invited him to come, and he agreed to do that. And so he's been here this week doing lectures. There's one more tomorrow night at 7:30, and it's on the antiquities or an ancient Egyptian religion, which is really very interesting. Hisham is educated in the University of Cairo. He's a native of Egypt. He has family there, and he's been doing lectures for 20 years in England and in Egypt, and this is his first one in the United States. So we have him on our phone. I'd like to introduce him.
Thank you. Right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Can you all hear me all right? Yeah.
Give your camera.
So I'm really honored to be with you today, and I met some of you earlier on, and I'm really glad to meet more of you today. As Nancy mentioned, time is very tight because I know that there is a service running at 10 o'clock, so I would like just to cover some of the main subjects about Christianity in Egypt this morning. And what I would like to say, that Egypt is a very religious country. Since the beginning of the Egyptian civilization, and religion was one of the main issues in Egypt. The nation had more than 2,000 gods and goddesses. And when it turned to Christianity, they were very good and strong Christians. When it changed later on to Islam, they became very good Muslims as well. So Christianity and Islam are the religions practiced nowadays in Egypt. So Christianity in Egypt is very different from the rest of the world in the way religion was introduced, in the way religion was accepted, and even in the way religion is practiced today. So in Egypt we have Christianity named as the Coptic sect, which is very Egyptian. You cannot find it anywhere else. Actually, the story of Christianity, or the idea of Christianity, was there in the Egyptian mythology thousands of years before Christianity. As one of the main legends talking about the beginning of creation mentioned God Osiris and his wife Isis, his brother Seth, and his sister Nephthys. According to the legend, they were the four children of the gods, and one of them killed the other one. So Seth, the bad one, killed Osiris. Very much similar story to the story of Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel. The main core of Christianity is the divine birth of Jesus and the resurrection from the dead. So the divine birth in ancient Egypt was very well known, which made the Egyptians the most people able to accept Christianity earlier than the rest of the world, because it was there already. So it was something common. It was not something odd to refuse. And the resurrection from the dead also was known in ancient Egypt, because Osiris was resurrected from the dead. So it was easy to accept this new religion, especially that when Christianity was introduced to Egypt, Egypt was under the Roman occupation and they were suffering a lot. There is one main fact we shouldn't neglect, and we'll come to talk about soon, which is the flight of the Holy Family into Egypt. The Holy Family came to visit Egypt, and they were running away from the Romans spent about 3 to 4 years within Egypt. So obviously they met many of the locals, many of the Egyptians, who heard the story about the divine birth of Jesus, and later on they were following the news of what happened to Jesus in the Holy Land, and when Christianity was introduced later on they were ready to accept it. So, as we are going to go through slides, I just would like to mention something very important about Egypt. Egypt is one of the very few countries which has one of the largest collection of icons in the world, because it was sort of a wave in Europe in the 16th and 17th century, which is the iconoclasm, and destroyed large number of icons in Europe. But the icons in Egypt, especially those in St. Catherine in the heart of Sinai, on Mount Sinai, Mount Moses and Mount Sinai around this area, survived from the iconoclasm, and they kept still one of the best collection of icons in the world. So this is one of the Coptic icons showing Virgin Mary, and Virgin Mary for the Copts is something very, very important. Maybe not like other sects in Christianity, but for the Egyptian Christians or the Copts, is very important figure. So Virgin Mary and the baby Jesus. This is one of the most famous icons, which is in one of the churches in Cairo, known as the Hanging Church. The Hanging Church. I told you briefly about the legend of Isis and Osiris, so we'll go quickly through it just to let you have a chance to understand the connection and how people accepted Christianity. The body here laying down is the body of Osiris after being killed by his brother, the bad one, Seth. He was mummified and he was buried, and then he was resurrected from the dead. The resurrection, that's Osiris again, and that's his wife Isis. And by the way, funny to know that the official title of goddess Isis was Virgin Mother Isis. Virgin, that's the official title in hieroglyphics, Virgin Mother Isis. Why she was known as Virgin Mother Isis? Because they hadn't conceived the child Horus unless Osiris was resurrected from the dead. So if you go back to this slide, you find that Isis is in the form of a bird, like flying over his body and receiving his seeds. So it was not actually like making love between Osiris and Isis. It was very symbolic that they had the child Horus. Here we see the falcon-headed god Horus. So Virgin Mother Isis and her husband Osiris would turn to be later on the god of the hereafter, the one in charge of judging humans by weighing their hearts against the feather of justice to find out if they were good or bad, and then accordingly they would be sent to heaven or to hell. That's the other sister, Nephthys. Here you can see the king here actually was Seti the First. Seti the First may be not very well known, but he was the father of the great pharaoh Ramesses II, and he was another great pharaoh. That scene is from his temple in a place called Abydos, and Abydos is north of Luxor, about 2 hours drive from Luxor, and he's holding like a pillar or a column, and that pillar is known as the Jed pillar, which is the backbone of Osiris, and it's the symbol of resurrection. So he is offering the Jed pillar to Isis as if he's telling her that I am supporting you to bring Osiris back from the dead, and I will be joining Osiris when I die, going to heaven, so you got to recommend me to the afterlife. So this is the resurrection scene from the temple of Abydos. Here we have a lovely scene from the temple of Philae in Aswan. Osiris, after being resurrected from the dead, and Isis with the 2 wings, because she had the form of a bird as we saw before. So most of the time she's shown with those two wings and like holding the body of her husband Osiris. Here we can see like a little comparison between the two pictures, so you can understand the mentality of the ancient Egyptians when Christianity was introduced. Isis and the son Horus was already accepted and well known. So later on when Christianity was introduced, they found that Virgin Mary is very much similar to the idea of Virgin Mother Isis. Yeah? Okay. Here we can see also two icons of Virgin Mary and Isis. Now we come to the turning point in the Egyptian history when the royal family came to Egypt when Jesus was still a baby. This is also another beautiful icon from the church in Cairo and showing Virgin Mary carrying the baby Jesus on a donkey and accompanied by Joseph the carpenter. When they came here to Egypt, we have to understand the political background at the time. Egypt was suffering a lot, or the Egyptians were suffering a lot from the Romans. They were treating the Egyptians badly, not like the Greeks before them. So they were suffering, they couldn't even practice their own religions and so on. Something united the Holy Family and the Egyptians because of the persecutions of the Romans. So they met the Holy Family. I would like to show you a map, shows the route of the Holy Family into Egypt. They were coming from the Holy Land, that's Rafah, in Israel now, and going into Sinai, and reaching the Delta, and all these arrows showing the route of the Holy Family. Where they stop, those little black dots, as you can see, this is where the Holy Family stationed for a while. Could be a week, could be a month, whatever. They spent like 3.5 to 4 years within Egypt, and going all the way down to the south, to a place called Asyut. So you can imagine that they covered a long distance, and you can expect that they met lots of Egyptians within that period of time, within their journey. So they told them about the birth of Jesus, and they accepted, they were united and so on. There's no idea of Christianity yet. Christianity has not been introduced to Egypt yet. Here you can see that was the end of their journey in a place called Asyut, where we have one of the famous monasteries, the monastery of Deir el-Maharra, which is again north of Luxor. You can see Luxor here, that's Asyut. So when Christianity was introduced officially in the year 61 AD, the Egyptians, by St. Mark, the Egyptians were ready to accept this religion for more than one reason. It's very similar to their own beliefs, and it is the religion of love and peace, which is promising them with a better life in the hereafter. He said, if we are suffering already in this life, so if we convert to Christianity, which is quite similar to the core of our belief, so we're not doing something wrong. This is one. Two, the religion looks like a religion of love and peace, so it might give them peace in the afterlife. They believed in the afterlife more than the first life. The first life was a very short period of time. Sooner or later they will die. So they started converting to Christianity. What they never thought and expected, that when they convert to Christianity, will be like giving the Romans another good reason to give them even harder time. They were already suffering, but now they give the Romans another good reason to give them even harder time. So they couldn't actually, there were thousands of early Christians in Egypt were persecuted and killed and died with bloodshed, and were revolutions everywhere in Egypt, and confrontation with the Romans and so on. And it's the time of the martyrs in Egypt, when many of the saints died and killed and so on, and they have their relics now in many of the churches in Egypt. Relics and icons are very big things also in the Coptic Egypt or Christianity. So some of them actually couldn't stand living in the cities. Also with the idea that we are Christians, we are devoting our life to God, so we don't really care about this life. So we should live somewhere isolated. We live far from the Romans, we live far from people and just worship God. Egypt was pioneer in many things, building the pyramids, in medicine, in astronomy, and even when it comes to Christianity, it was pioneer in Christianity. Although Christianity hasn't started in Egypt, but Egypt introduced many things to Christianity. One of them is the monastic life. The first monasteries ever being built were in Egypt. So this is another picture of the journey of the Holy Family. Here, if you can see the Nile Valley, on the east bank of the River Nile, the eastern desert, by the Red Sea, two of the early Christians, St. Paul and St. Anthony, decided to live there without knowing each other, but both of them went to live more or less in the same area. And they spent years and years there, living on just a small piece of bread. A bird was bringing it every day, and a little well in the area. They haven't met each other until the last day of the life of St. Anthony, when St. Paul went to visit him and he attended his death. Those two saints, St. Paul and St. Anthony, started the monastic life in Egypt. And that was about the 2nd century AD. By the 4th century AD, the monastic life was well established and was introduced to the rest of the world. It took about 4 centuries until the 4th century AD for Christianity to become the official religion of the empire, including Egypt, and since then Egypt turned to be a Christian country. So the Egyptians started enjoying their freedom of speech and freedom of religion as well. Here we have, I'll come back to talk about this period, but I would like to explain about this slide here. This is from the Temple of Edfu, which is in Upper Egypt, between Luxor and Aswan, and it shows one of the battle scenes. The one here, the figure here, is the figure of Horus, the son of Isis and Osiris. He was representing the good. So the good was fighting evil, and that was evil. The god of evil, God Seth, with his harpoon, is killing him. We find the same or similar figure of St. George fighting the dragon. Very much similar idea. The defacement here, we'll come to talk about this later on, was done by the early Christians when they were hiding in the temples and tombs from the Romans. And I will tell you later why they had this defacement. Here another picture. The goddess, or the evil goddess, was shown always in the form of either a donkey or a hippopotamus, as you can see. It's a small size for a hippo, but they wanted to show that Horus is stronger and bigger and so on. The same thing with St. George and the dragon. And that's a fascinating one because this is from the Book of the Dead. This one here is from the Book of the Dead, and you can see they're killing the snake. The same thing here, that's a very famous icon in the Hanging Church as well in Cairo, and St. George is killing the snake. See how similar art was between ancient Egypt and early Christianity. One of the famous symbols of Egypt was the key of life. The key of life, or the key of the Nile. And we find that the cross is also the symbol of life. Also it's the symbol of crucifixion of Jesus, but also it's the symbol of life. So the key of life, which was the symbol of life, is very much similar to the cross. And this from one of the tombs in the Valley of the Kings. When the Christians were hiding, the early Christians, within the first 3 centuries, they were painting and leaving some graffitis. As you can see, this is one of them, and you can see some of the graffitis here, the Coptic graffitis and the cross. Yeah, that's from the tomb of Ramesses IV in the Valley of the Kings. So you can see those are the legs of the pharaoh actually. You can see here, and that's like a text, and that's the cartouche of the king. The Coptic text next to it. Yeah, that's from Ramesses IV, and this is from the temple of Isis in Aswan, the temple of Philae. The cross is deeply carved on one of the columns. The crosses, they look very much like Maltese crosses. And the temple of Philae in Aswan, by the 5th century AD, and after converting to Christianity and becoming the main religion, they realized that Isis and her temple in Aswan still attracting lots of followers of the old religion of Isis. So they decided, the governors of Aswan, they decided to close the temple as a temple and reopen the temple as a church. So the temple was converted, like many of the other temples were converted to a church, a Coptic church. So it was never used as a temple since, but it was used as a church until the modern time. Also, they were creative. When they found in most of the temples we have always Trinity, the main gods and 2 secondary gods. Could be his wife, daughter, his wife's son, sister and brother, whatever, but we always have like a main god and 2 secondary gods. So this is from the temples of Karnak, and the one in the middle was supposed to be Amun-Ra, his wife Mut, and his son Khonsu. So they chopped off the statues to make it look like a cross. Yeah? So very creative, even with vandalizing these statues. Here is the map of Egypt. I was looking for it actually, and it's showing the location of the monastery of St. Anthony. St. Anthony and St. Paul, they were by the Red Sea. So sometimes I take groups to St. Anthony and St. Paul, and I still cannot believe how these people lived almost 2,000 years ago in this place. Nowadays, in the modern time, with all the technology we have, and current water and electricity and buses and cars, and it's still harsh. It's like in the middle of nowhere. So they must have had very strong faith and belief and a strong will as well to live just individually in a place like this. When they started building monasteries, actually, that was like, I would say, by the 4th century AD, and taking its final form by the 6th century AD, they were expecting raids from the Bedouins in the desert. They had food, they had water, they had animals and so on, so the Bedouins were raiding on the monasteries. So they built the monasteries like a castle, well protected and well fortified, as we'll talk about this later stage. That's an icon of St. Paul and St. Anthony, and you can see the bird was bringing the half loaf of bread, and one day it brought one complete loaf of bread, so they knew that they're gonna meet, because they were expecting only half loaf, so he got a full one now, so he's expecting a visitor to come. St. Paul and St. Anthony, and that's the monastery of St. Anthony in the eastern desert. That's a modern picture, and that's a new gate as well. These are the Coptic crosses, and that's the inside of the monastery, and you can see it's just mountains, and they have a beautiful well there which is used for irrigation. The monasteries in Egypt, they have certain land by the Nile, in the Nile Valley, so across the desert, and they grow crops there because they cannot grow crops in this area, it's not enough water. and that's how they support their society. Societies were evolved and constructed around the monastery, and was attracting lots of monks. To become a monk in the Egyptian monastery, you have to spend at least 3 years as a trial period, and then the other monks would say if you can carry on or not before they give you the permission to become a monk. That's a beautiful icon showing Jesus and Virgin Mary and Maria Magdalena. And now I would like to show you how the Coptic church were influenced by building temples. The Coptic church, they are like sort of basilican churches, and this is again the hanging church in Cairo, in the area which is known as Coptic Cairo. You can see like the arched windows here, and that's the inside of Karnak, and you can see the windows as well over there. Very similar design. They have like a main aisle in the middle, which is a higher ceiling than the two wings. And here you can see again very similar from inside. This is from the monastery of St. Paul, and it's showing Jesus, beautiful painting on a fresco. That's a clearer one here. And those four figures are the sons of Horus. You know, have you ever heard of the canopic jars? Yeah, the canopic jars found like among the treasures of Tutankhamun. The canopic jars, each one should be with a different leg representing one of the sons of Horus, and they are protecting the internal organs of the king. That's the plan of the church, and that's the plan of the Egyptian temple. The early churches in Egypt were temples. Before building church on its own, they were using the Egyptian temples for about like 3 centuries as Coptic churches. There are places in Luxor, like the famous temple of Queen Hatshepsut. The name of the temple of Queen Hatshepsut in Arabic is Al-Dir Al-Bahari. And even if anybody has been to Egypt, you got the tickets, you find that the name written on the ticket is not the temple of Hatshepsut, it's Al-Dir Al-Bahari. Al-Dir means monastery, and Bahari is a northern monastery. It's located further north. And the Valley of the Workers in Luxor, on the west bank of Luxor, is also known as Deir al-Medina. Medina means town. So the monastery of town, or the town monastery. So that's an indication how many of these sites were converted to Coptic churches. That's a beautiful Coptic cross from Philae, and that's the key of life. Again, the key of life and the cross. Right. Here we come through like a couple of slides showing the defacement of the figures in some of these temples. And the defacement was done for a very good reason actually. Because at the beginning of Christianity, they were looking, they converted to Christianity, yes, but they still believe in the other gods. They still believe in other religions. Yeah? Because a society with 2,000 gods, so it doesn't mean that when you convert to a religion that you are dropping the others. No. They were used to worship Horus, and then respect Isis, and then make offerings to Thoth, and so on and so on and so on. So when they convert to Christianity, they still believe that those gods exist. It's not just Christianity, yeah? So they believe that if they deface the figures, if they damage the figures, especially the faces, it will stop those figures from being recognized to the afterlife. That's the most severe punishment. So either they stop the figures from coming back to the afterlife, or they can be free when they practice Christianity in those temples, because it's totally forbidden in their own belief to practice the religion of a god in a temple which belongs to another god. You can have a great respect to all of them, yes, but if you are in the temple of Osiris, so you cannot make offerings to Isis, even his